Hi, I'm Will Bruin, and I was just recognized as a Seattle Sounders legend. Now I get to do voice reads for the Sounder at Heart podcast network.
Here we go. Come on! Hey, O'Shan! Let's go!
The Seattle Sounders have done it! MLS Cup winners!
Here comes Rui Diaz through the middle to crown it for Seattle!
The Sounders rule the region!
Seattle Sounders is campeón! All creatures great and small!
You know, what was the thought process in terms of who you decided to use and who you didn't?
Ever since Sounder at Heart wrote a commentary that we didn't take Come seriously.
This episode of Nos Arietes is sponsored by Full Pull Wines, a Seattle-based wine retailer and proud sponsor of Nos Arietes since 2011. Full Pull was founded in 2009, is based in Seattle, and is owned and operated by longtime Sounders supporters. They offer the best boutique wines of the world to members of their mailing list, with special focus on their home, the Pacific Northwest. Welcome back to another episode of Nos Arietes on the Sounder at Heart podcast network. I am Jeremiah Chan. Joining me today, someone we've had on the show before, and hopefully you remember this person. Frank MacDonald. He is the executive director of Washington State Legends of Soccer, which is effectively the local soccer Hall of Fame. Welcome to the show, Frank. Happy to have you back talking an event that you guys have coming up, as well as the recent vote for Sounders Legends, Eternal Sounders Legends. What's the right name? Circle of Legends.
Well, it's really nice to be here.
Yeah, sorry.
It's an eternal
Sounders Circle of Legends.
Circle of Legends. Eternal Sounders Circle of Legends, I think, is how it goes.
A little complicated of a name.
Apologies to anyone who tested that title.
Yeah. Well, let's get this. Let's start here. You have an event coming up on November 18th. It's essentially an evening with Brian Schmetzer and friends. It's going to be on November 18th. It's a fundraiser for the Washington Legends, as well as just a fun night out. Tell us a little bit about this event and what people should expect.
Well, we've had 3 or 4 of these events, but this one where it honors the person that's mentioned in the title. But Brian is actually Brian Schmetzer's the MC, the chief storyteller or coaxer of stories out of the people he's going to bring on stage, which will be representatives of each Sounders era going back to the 70s. And so he'll go through 5 decades with them and tell stories, hopefully, that are not mainstream, that are kind of, more B-sides, but probably more interesting anecdotes from over the years and what made each decade kind of its own little story, because it would change from time to time. So we're having that on November 18th at the Providence Swedish Performance Center and Clubhouse. So they're in the atrium of the headquarters there in Long Acres. And ticket includes food, drink, scarf, and the program, and it benefits both the Washington Legends and also the Jimmy Gabriel Memorial Scholarship. So it's our one fundraiser for the year, and we're pretty excited about it. But we've had to pull it together rather quickly, really since the end of summer when we got all the pieces in place.
Well, tell me about what does the Jimmy Gabriel Scholarship Fund do?
So Jimmy Gabriel, who's maybe not everyone recognizes his name. So he was the original. He was both the assistant coach and the captain of the '74 Sounders, and he was Scotsman who had played at Everton, won an FA Cup there, but he came to the Sounders. He was probably in his mid-30s. He just was a force of nature in that he was a leader. He was set the tone for the team. After playing and for 3 seasons, he then was the second head coach of the NASL team, took him to the final in his first year. So he coached 3 years. And but Jimmy would later coach. He was an assistant coach for both the men and the women over at the UW. So he was involved in collegiate, the collegiate game. He was Brian Schmetzer's assistant with the A-League team. He was the Washington State youth soccer first coaching director. So he was involved in the youth game, just ubiquitous. So Jimmy came from a very modest means there in Dundee, Scotland. And so we wanted to honor him in his passing a few years back with the creation of this scholarship for in-need kids. So it's not based on your talent level, whether you're awarded a scholarship or you're eligible for the scholarship. It's more, we're looking for people that are in need and that want to seek higher education, either at a college, 4-year school, 2-year school, vocational school. And we've, so this is, we started this in 2019, and so far, I believe we're up to about 30 young people that we have scholarshiped. And last year we bumped up the level by 50%, the pot, because of what we raised at the Cliff McGrath event a year ago. So we're hoping we can at least sustain that, if not grow that, for these people. So that's the Jimmy Gabriel Memorial Scholarship in essence. Yeah. And you don't have to be the top scorer on your team. In fact, a lot of these people don't even play soccer in college, or they're playing at a junior college or whatever. But so it is all about the individual and helping them be, follow their dreams, essentially.
Awesome. And so this event that we're getting into here for Brian, you said he's mostly going to be sort of like the chief storyteller. Anything you can give us, any teasers as to who some of these guests might be?
Well, he's got his invitations out, and so I can't slip, but I will just say some of them will seem like a natural, like you've seen Brian banter with certain people especially that he's coached in the past. But I mean, some of these people were, Brian started off as a fan. He went to the games at Memorial and the Kingdom, and then he joined the team. So, he knows these people as people he was a fan of, to teammates, to that he coached with. So I think there's going to be a personal relationship with just about everybody, and we're going to start dribbling those names out as they confirm. But I would estimate there are going to be 12 to 15 different people coming up. Yeah.
Wow, that's quite a
not all at once. Heaven help us. Stage there is not that large, so. But I think about 3 at a time, or 2 and 1, or something like that. Yeah, just quick and little. So people nuggets.
Yeah, people can go check out tickets for that on wasoccerlegends.com if they're interested. That's also where the online museum lives, right? At the same.
There's a link that says history, and then you go there. Yeah, which we encourage people to look in there. You can go down the rabbit hole very quickly, and just punch in a name of someone you're curious about, and you'll get everything there is to do about that. So, if you're like me back in the 70s, you're trying to do a high school term paper and you forgot about it for 2 weeks and you want to do it on soccer, this is an easy resource, and everything, of course, is vetted. So, it's there. And we were very, I went to the Men in Blazers, I guess you call it podcast, at Showbox Soto, and they liberally took from our online museum.
With credit, with credit, obviously, right?
No, we got no credit, but at least we knew that they were
doing their research.
But maybe just the night before. Yeah,
fair enough.
Yeah. So
So one of the other events that you were sort of, or ongoing endeavors that you're sort of that you are involved with, is this, like I said, the Eternal Sounders Circle of Legends. There we go. Nailed it. And we just closed the vote for this, closed a couple weeks ago. My understanding is that all three of Jimmy Gabriel, Siggy Schmid, and Casey Keller have all gained entry into this. I don't think that's been formally announced, but they've let us know that they all ended up being approved. My understanding is you were involved in the nomination process. What is that like, and what do you think? I guess the question is, how quickly do you think this is going to start getting really interesting or contentious, and or do you feel like this is going to usually be a pretty smooth sailing kind of situation? Because I know a lot of people have compared it to the Seahawks, who have a dozen or so people, but off the top of my head, I feel like I could reel off easily that many Sounders who feel like they should maybe belong. And that, part of that is because the Sounders have been really successful for their 50 years.
They have, and you're also playing from behind, because the Seahawks started their recognition of past players and coaches and so on, 25, 30 years ago. And this is just beginning. So there's a backlog. And I think that's what you're weighing when you're sifting through the nominations or coming up with the nominations, actually. So you want pillars to start, something you can build upon. And you don't want to, there should be an order to it. If someone has a great, and a lot of the criteria doesn't allow for you to just inject somebody in the year after they retire necessarily. I mean, there are special circumstances, but
right.
There should be an order to it. It should be an orderly, but we're limited by class size, and the criteria that's being developed is rather, it's not something that everybody is going to check all the boxes. So, but I feel like this is a very representative class. As I described Jimmy Gabriel, he was so much a part of the first 6 years of the Sounders. He was a part of the second iteration. He was a broadcast radio analyst for the MLS era early on, involved all along the way. Ziggy was so much, drove the expectations and just the competitive nature of him those first few years. There's that. And I just think, Casey was one of those pieces. If we had a team, if MLS had existed in the 90s, it's conceivable he would have been here, but I know he always had dreamed of playing in Europe. But he came back, and that was such a great homecoming, and he got himself so prepared because he didn't want to let anybody down. He wanted to be the Casey Keller that had been with the national team, and you saw play for Spurs or Leicester or wherever he played in Europe, he wanted to be that same keeper when he came home to play in front of his friends and neighbors, essentially. So I just think they set a standard, and that's all you can ask really of a incoming initial class of individuals. I know they follow the 74 team, which was the North Star really for everything. But anyway, I think as individuals, they really fit the mold of what I would want.
Yeah, I know when I saw the class, it made total sense to me. But when I started talking to people like in the Sounder Heart Discord, there was a pretty robust discussion about Casey's status in particular. And I think it was mainly around the idea that, as good as Casey was, and he was, he's a first ballot National Soccer Hall of Famer. He is, at one point he was considered arguably the greatest goalkeeper in the world. Like that at the height of his, powers. And certainly he was, he played in 3 or 4 World Cups for the United States. He was a starter for at least 2, if not 3 of those. And yeah, I guess he was in 4 and he was the starter for 3, right? Is that right? Am I remembering that correctly?
Well, he was on squads, and yeah, he and Chris were on the 90 team, and
right.
Then they weren't on the 94. But anyway, yes. And he was supposed to alternate with Friedel, and then Friedel got really hot there in the 02,
right.
And he, Arena played the hot hand. I get that. But yeah, he was, I think he retired from international play with the most wins and shutouts of any national team keeper. So
yeah, and he has plenty as we've all of a sudden started measuring. He had a lot of signature wins. He had some massive performances and massive games for the United States. And I guess the knock against him on the Sounders side is he was only here 3 years, and I suppose that's sort of where the shortfalls end. But for me, I look at him as there was multiple levels of why he was important. There was the fact that his signing was sort of a proof of seriousness for this organization. I believe he was the first big name that the Sounders signed, even though that's technically a little before I started getting involved in this. But that must have been, I guess let's start there. That had to have been a pretty big deal. I know season tickets were already selling pretty well at that point, but bringing in a Casey Keller had to sort of change the conversation around what this team was sort of aspiring to be. Thank you for listening to the Sounder at Heart Podcast Network, which now includes No Sarietes, Lobbing Scorchers, and the Cooler Guild. Although this podcast is free, it's only made possible through our paid subscribers. Plans start as low as $30 a year and allow us to remain independent and mostly ad-free. Subscribers get access to all our written and podcast content, including a full-text RSS feed and a mostly ad-free podcast feed that includes every show in one spot. If you really like what we're doing, though, I'd encourage you to sign up at our higher tier, which include all sorts of various perks. The most popular of those is our members-only Discord, where the real Sounders sickos hang out. I know I've called this group the smartest, funniest, and best-informed Sounders fans in the world, but it's more than the rough equivalent of a Sounders Mensa meeting. Discord is where we make things happen, like for real. The promotion the Sounders ran that offered fans the opportunity to trade in their Messi jersey for a Paul Rothrock one? That originated in our community. You'll not only be the first to know about stuff, but you also have a semi-direct line to the movers and shakers at the Sounders organization. If you want to be one of the totally normal people who occupy the Sounder at Heart Discord, just become a supporter of Sounder at Heart. Anyway, thanks for listening, and go Durs. No Sarietes, admittedly, is not exactly known for our spicy takes, but that doesn't mean we want our food to be mild. Spice up your life with Hacks and Ferments. Handcrafted in Georgetown and made with the best local ingredients from across the Pacific Northwest, they specialize in unique small batch fermented hot sauces and vinegars. Hacks and Ferments brings bold flavors and natural fermentation together for something truly special. Whether you're a heat seeker or just looking to elevate your cooking, you'll find something you love at hacksandferments.com. That's HAXANFERMENTS.com. And right now, if you use the code SOUNDERATHEART, that's all one word, at checkout, you will get a free hot sauce with your order. Again, go to hacksandferments.com, use the code SOUNDERATHEART at checkout for a free hot sauce with your order. Hacks and Ferments is a proud sponsor of the Sounder at Heart podcast network.
Confirmed what everybody hoped. You hoped that this team would set a standard, that it wasn't just entering the fray wanting to be one of the gang. I think I can't remember how many teams there were back, 15 maybe.
If they were the 15th, yeah.
Yeah, I think I think it was also one of the worst kept secrets. So I think people had already speculated that he was going to join, and so and then later on Lundberg followed. But I think there was an expectation that Casey was free; he was a free agent, and he should be available, and they'd be, I think there was the expectation that he was going to be involved. He's said some very complimentary things about the organization before he came aboard. So, I just don't know what people would, if Messi hadn't signed the other day to, renew his contract or extend his contract, would you keep him out of the Inter Miami Hall of Fame after 3 years? I don't know.
That's a great analogy. That's really, I don't, and in some ways that's hyperbolic, but in other ways it's not. I mean, this is a player who was the starter almost literally every game. I mean, he started almost every Open Cup game during that era. He started, I believe, every CONCACAF Champions League game during that era, or maybe save for one or two. But he obviously played. I think he missed only one or two regular season games. He played every playoff game. He won goalkeeper of the year. He led the Sounders to 3. He was on the field for 3 Open Cup titles. I mean, he did everything you could have possibly asked for the Sounders at that time. And, one of the things that stood out to me, and this is actually right around the time when I first started covering the team, was in 2010 when there was all this talk of a strike or a lockout, that there was going to be some labor disruption in 2010. Freddie Ljungberg did not report for camp at the beginning of camp because he was like, "Oh, I thought we were maybe striking. We don't have a contract. So what's the deal here?" And Casey went on public and was just like, he needs to get his ass here. This is not Europe. Our camp is open. Get your ass over here. And I thought, this is a guy who really takes this. This is not he wasn't here to be on vacation and go on a retirement tour. He was here to play ball.
Yeah, I think that's what happens when you come home and you have a reputation and you're coming home to your hometown team. If anything, you ratchet up the expectation in your own mind. He didn't want people probably to bring up his age. He wanted to be just seen as an elite keeper. Coming into a team that expected to do well, expected to make the playoffs, and that's where the Ziggy and Casey kind of intersect. Is there was an expectation in that locker room: we will compete, we won't, accept anything but victory. We came out those first 3 years with an expectation to make playoffs, compete for championships, and you got to be at your top form, especially if you're a keeper. It's just, Casey worked out quite a bit for, he was almost off a half a season or 3/4 of a season coming into 2009. And I know he worked out with Tommy Dutra during that time to prepare himself, and games are what a keeper really needs. But he was doing everything he could to get himself ready for that season. He took it most seriously. Yeah.
And then of course he stuck around for a long time as the play-by-play or the color broadcaster, which I know that was sort of a controversial. He was a controversial figure, I think, in that he was not always glowing in his praise. But I actually came to really appreciate that unlike a lot of color announcers across sport, he was really wanting to educate the listener. Like he wanted people to understand, like, yes, he oftentimes had a defense first sort of mindset, and every goal there was a mistake that he felt compelled to point out, but there was a real learning process in that, and it wasn't all about just fluffing everyone and getting excited. There was like an educational element to this, and I felt like that wasn't always appreciated as much as it deserved to be. But he was, for me, a really good, high quality color commentator, and I feel like I miss him, I think, on the broadcast more than anyone else, because that's one of the things that in this new Apple universe where you have a new announcing team every week, they just don't have the familiarity that he has, and honestly, they don't have the expertise that he has, even beyond knowing the team well.
Yeah, I think it was that, and yeah, you always felt like you're getting his view from standing in the box and looking out, and
right,
what's coming at you, and who got caught too far forward or out of line with the rest of the four, and and if anything, you wanted to hear a little bit of joy before he started dissecting the play. But that's, that was him. He was very analytical and very good at organizing a defense and a team. And you talk about the 2010, I mean, he took his captaincy very seriously. It wasn't just an honorary title or anything. I know it in MLS, it doesn't have the same role that it would have in Europe, where the captain is going in, or at least in the old days, where the captain would go in and give the pitch for how much should be divided, for the spoils of a cup run, right, or something like that. I don't think, CBA's over here or whatever. You can't do that. But no, he took it very, very seriously. And I commend him for it. I can't think of anybody else. I just wish Marcus, we had so many good keepers. I wish Marcus could have come at the closer to the peak of his time. I think he was available.
There was talk of him coming a couple years earlier, if I remember correctly, because he came in. Was it late 2013 that he actually came? But he would have theoretically been available to come in 12. The Sounders ended up with
an arrangement in advance. Yes. Yeah. I mean, Marcus, when he was totally different kind of keeper, I think. But, if you saw him play for Reading back when they were, minnows against sharks in the Premier League, he turned in some just fantastic performances. But they were, if I recollect, they were a different type of approach to goalkeeping, Marcus versus Casey. I'm not a qualified coach to break it down, especially for this, but and he was just such a character. I
loved Marcus. I think everyone who meets Marcus, I think Casey is someone who you could really admire from afar. And I've told this story before, but my wife, the first soccer player that at least in my knowledge, that she ever sort of like fell in love with was Casey Keller, because of his performance at the 2006 World Cup. Whereas Marcus was someone that if you might not have known who he was necessarily, because he was oftentimes not the highest profile player. Like he was always, he made a bunch of World Cups, but I don't think he made any appearances in the World Cup as a example. Yeah. But he, once you met him, it was like this nuclear personality of you just want to hang out with him. I mean, you would just want to be around him, and you'd want to, be in his sphere of energy, just because he's got a million stories and they're all fun, and seems like
he and Casey hang out. They've golfed together. They do stuff together. Their families saw one another when they were both, residing in England, and you would think that they're kind of different personalities, but they meshed together. They they hang out together. So that's
the podcast that we need to make happen. The Casey Keller, Marcus Hahnemann podcast.
Hosted by...
Right. Yeah. On the Sounder at Heart Podcast Network, guys, get in touch with my people and we will make this happen. But, looking forward into the, I know you're not, I don't want you to give away too much, and I don't want you to kind of poison the pool, so to speak. But when you look ahead to the future of the Eternal Sounders Circle of Legends, I feel like we can all name off a bunch of MLS players who probably belong in this thing, but who are maybe some of the USL or NASL players that you think are names that fans should start familiarizing themselves with so that they can have an educated opinion when they come up?
Oh, I think we're out ahead of we're not there yet. I don't even think that we really discussed anybody beyond this group. We were very intent upon getting this group right, getting a grasp of what this was all about. It's not just a Hall of Fame. I think that was that took a while for our heads to wrap around this, that this is more exclusive than a Hall of Fame. So that is, once we landed on that, then we were really looking at, just like I said, again, pillars. And so I don't know, do we have all the pillars yet? Probably not.
No, I don't think so.
You can have 8, 10, whatever. But these, it's a start, and we just want to make sure that each one of these are just rock solid, that you wanted to build upon. I mean, there was a guy that wore a number 6 shirt for a while, that I think would be very, very well equipped.
An animal nickname, probably.
Yeah. So I think of that.
I'm guessing that someone who fans might not totally be familiar with, but I would imagine you can speak to, like someone like a Gary Wright, who very much behind the scenes type of character. I would imagine someone like him, very integral to sort of what the Sounders are.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, those are names that, it's not just players, and in that context, I mean, I don't know if everybody's attuned to people that made things happen, especially before MLS. It's just like I said, we didn't get to year 2 because we were using up our time making sure we got year 1 right.
I think I'll just say I think you guys did a good job. I think you guys picked a good class to get this conversation going.
Cool. Well, I just want people to be interested. I hope that the pieces, the people involved in the nominating will probably change over time, but I think what they want to get is a breadth of knowledge over the eras, to not overlook NASL and A-League times. It's that's what started it all, and you want to exhaust all of the ones who made those teams go. There were some difficult times. I mean, we don't think necessarily that the media, the mass media, is that friendly to soccer still, but you can't imagine what it was like in the 70s, where they just, you get the eye roll or the sigh when soccer came up to a sports editor or sports director, and then certainly, in the 90s, those guys they're not making a full-time wage. So it was kind of treated as, semi-pro or something like that. And that didn't mean they weren't working any harder. They were probably working there. They had a job, and then they'd, turn out in the evening, and then they'd have to travel. So, I mean, there's a lot of sacrifice going on. So we want to make sure we get the discovery process, I guess, is what I'd say, is make sure we're not overlooking anyone. A lot of the contemporary fans will have a firm grip on, from '09 on who is deserving. It's the other ones that we want to also be cognizant of.
Yeah. Not that I necessarily, I'm not putting his name forward, but in researching some of this stuff, I was taken aback. Cam Weaver had a 19 goal season for the Sounders in the USL era. That was that I guess technically he was tied for the all competition lead, or he is still tied for the all competition lead in the organization's history.
No, that would be not at 19 goals, but
well, he would be tied with Oba and Raul, right?
Had at least, I want to say, 27 goals in 1980.
Oh, okay. So I needed to go farther back. Clearly.
Mark Baina had back-to-back 20-goal seasons in the late 90s with the A-League team, and that didn't include playoffs. So there's some that, I guess that's exactly what I'm illustrating. But Cam Weaver, he had that great season. He was Rookie of the Year, and then he was promptly bought up by a team. I know it was a Scandinavian team. I just can't remember which country. So he goes there, and then when he comes back to the U.S., he goes through Houston.
Right.
And so I think by the time he rejoined the Sounders and Sounders FC, he was at the end of his career, so to speak.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, there's lots of ones, but again, and then it's got to be more than just one big season that gets you noticed. I mean, was it sustained?
Right.
So that's all important too. So I don't have the criteria in front of me. I
mean, the criteria. The criteria is just the baseline for what needs to be even considered. Not necessarily. There's no automatic entries into this thing. I mean, that's sort of what makes it great. Is you have to meet the criteria to get nominated or to be considered, and then you have to be nominated and then you have to get voted in by the proles, as it were.
You've got to be patient. If you're a fan of a certain player or something, you just because we have a backlog. And the classes are very small. You just have to keep that in mind. I mean, I've been involved in other halls of fame where we've inducted people posthumously. That'll be the case with both Jimmy and Ziggy. But you want the person to be there to acknowledge the respect and the outpouring of gratitude for them receiving this award. So we don't want to wait too long, but there's an orderly process, I guess. Yeah.
Well, I won't put you on the spot, but I will go on my bully pulpit here and say, for this to be taken as seriously as I think it needs to be taken, and I think this is a very serious thing, is the Sounders need to get some sort of like permanent signage inside the facility. The digital ad board is a decent placeholder. It's not bad, but I do think it gets lost too easily. I think it's too easy to just see it as a temporary thing that can be flipped on and flipped off. And for this to really mean something, I think you can look down or look up into Vancouver, where our friends at the Whitecaps have built a similar structure, and they can, I guess it's removable, but it looks permanent when it's in the facility. I think that's sort of where the Sounders need to be going with this. They need to, if they want this to be a big deal, and if they want it to get the hype and the energy and the attention that it deserves, it deserves some kind of permanent signage in the facility. And I think that's sort of that's the next step of this thing. Like I said, as a first year thing, the temporary digital board worked okay, but it needs to be visible. It needs to be permanent, and it needs to be something worthy of the honor that this is meant to be.
I agree. And I know I've been to other facilities where I don't feel these are out of state, that where their Hall of Famers are out by the practice field. That's where you find them. It has to be in plain view for the public. And to that, I agree with you. I wish the stadium was just as much a Sounders venue as it is a Seahawks venue.
Now we're
because that is voted in as a soccer football facility. So I hold them to that. And yeah, we don't have everything we want for a soccer venue right now, but we can make a little more progress on that. That'd be great.
Yeah, I would totally agree with you there. Well, Frank, I think I'm going to let you go. I appreciate all the time that you put into this. I'll give another plug for Washington State Legends of Soccer. If you want to visit their website, it's WA Legends. Is that right?
It's wasoccerlegends.org.
There you go. And of course, there's this Brian Schmetzer event on November 18th that you guys are currently selling tickets to. And I think it'll be great. Frank, thank you so much for doing this. Anywhere else people can follow you? Well, obviously you can read. Frank periodically writes for Sounder at Heart. It should be said.
I'm on Blue Sky and Twitter, and that's about it. And I got a blog, but you'll find that. Just look around. Just spell the right name right. Little Scottish spelling of MAC, and you got it all set.
Very good. Well, thank you, Frank, for doing this. I'm Jeremiah O'Shan, signing off for No Saudi This, part of the Sounder at Heart Podcast Network, and we will catch you next time.
Let's go Sounders.